Hello and welcome to this week's IG Live. Today we are going to be talking to author and founder of Makeaway Media. And of course, I'm talking about Deedee Cummings. And we are going to be talking about her wonderful children's books for Christmas. If you haven't seen them, you should really, check them out now. Here is the first one, In the Nick of Time. And of course, we have our artist who is joining us now. If you missed her interview, we also did an interview with her recently and talked about her work. And this is the latest one, In the Nick of Time 2. You can see it's just gorgeous artwork, and it's a really lovely story about both of them talk about the real meaning of Christmas and holiday magic, and especially talking about inclusion. As we know, there are very few books out there with a Black Santa. And not only does it feature a Black Santa, but it really gets into the question of what color is Santa and how you can talk about this with kids. Hello. So we're going to be talking all about that. We hope you all are having a lovely holiday season so far. And we're getting down. So I should know this, I think 11 days until then. So hopefully it is a magical and joyful time and not a stressful time for you. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, I'm so happy to see you.
So nice to see you. I was just showing off your beautiful books here.
Oh, thank you. You grabbed them. I just went to go try to find 2 copies real quick.
Don't worry, I've got you covered.
Okay, great. Awesome. We have like a storage room here, so I had to hurry up and go find 2 copies, but you already had them. Oh, look at that. It's been a minute since I looked at all of the illustrations.
Yes.
Is Charlene Mosley wonderful?
She is wonderful. And I was just reminding people that we actually had an interview with her recently, so you can go back and learn more about how I find it really fascinating, just kind of the business behind how books get put together. As somebody who just loves reading books, I just enjoy them, but then to see about the process of how the two of you work together and really how she as an artist kind of helps bring that vision to life, it kind of gives it a lot more meaning now when I read the book.
Oh, I love hearing that. Part of the reason why we founded the Louisville Book Festival, because I think that you can have a favorite book, but when you meet the author and hear the story behind it, it adds so much more to the book. And so that's what I love about the Louisville Book Festival is this past year at the Louisville Book Festival, we had 150 authors.
Amazing.
I know, crazy. And a lot of them were children's authors. And I love hearing that exact same sentiment that you just said, how powerful it is to not only have the book, but have the author sign it and to get to talk with the author and ask questions. I mean, it's so powerful to hear people say, like, your book saved my life, or your book saved my marriage, or your book saved my dinner time. There's like a whole spectrum of ways that books help people. And you get to hear all about those at a book festival. But yeah, it's really cool working with Charlene and putting a book together. People always ask me, is it an easy process to put a book together? And, it's not like the most difficult thing in the world, but it's not easy. So in February or March, I think Charlene and I are going to go to Florida together and work together on, doing a couple books, like a little retreat for us. And one of the things, Charlene doesn't even know this yet. She's usually on the live, but she's not on today.
Oh, she was on earlier.
Oh, was she?
Falling off, yeah.
She's not on now?
Let me see. I don't think so. She was on before, so I'm not sure.
She doesn't even know this. I wonder if I type her name in. Oh yeah, look, you can tag somebody. Yep. I wonder.
Oh, there she is. Hi. I saw you on there.
Glad you're on, because guess what? I'm announcing this. Charlene, when we go to Florida in February and do our little retreat, we're going to make a 3rd In the Nick of Time book.
No.
Yeah, we're going to make a 3rd In the Nick of Time book. I haven't decided yet what I'm going to call it, but I think I'm going to call it Hope in the Nick of Time. And so it's going to complete this series. There'll only be 3. But I get such positive feedback, really, number one, about Charlene's art and just how beautiful it is to have that during the holiday season because her artwork alone is so filled with, yeah. Sorry, sorry you're finding out here with the rest of the world, Charlotte. But that was a surprise I had for you. That's why I want us to go away and do this retreat. Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
It's absolutely beautiful. Her artwork is amazing. People love the stories. They can't get enough of the stories.
Yes.
And so I'm really excited about that. And then we work with another creator. In addition to you, Leanna and Charlene, we work with a woman named Molly Ippolito, who's amazing.
Yes, right.
And Molly,
I got to interview her as well, so you guys
yeah,
can go back and look at that.
yeah, she's been on the Makeaway Live, and she's amazing. And Molly helped me put together this Kayla activity book that goes along with the Princess, a modern day. Kayla, a modern day princess storyline. And so, Charlene, another thing that we're going to do is we're going to have 3 in the nick of time books. I mean, here, this again is Charlene's artwork. I mean, is that not beautiful or what? So we're going to have 3 in the nick of times in the series. And then we're going to have an activity book like this to go along with those 3 in the nick of time series. Because these books are great because they get kids off. Here again is more of Charlene's art. It's amazing. These books are wonderful because they use kids' imagination. They're filled with affirmations and explaining to kids, you know, what self-esteem is about. And they have all kinds of fun activities. Remember when you were a kid and you used to go on road trips and you'd have books like this? So it gets kids off of screens for a little while and gets them doing other things. There's an activity in here where they can write a letter to their loved one. I love that. There's word search activities. There's all kinds of activities, and that's the exact same thing we're going to have for the In the Nick of Time series.
Oh, nice.
But I get so much positive feedback about this book, especially because of the Black Santa Claus.
Yes.
And this is Charlene's vision for the Black Santa Claus. He's so warm, and he's exactly what I picture. Oh, good. I'm glad you're excited, Charlene. Yeah. Finding out here with everybody else. But he is the exact image of what I thought my Santa Claus looked like. I read this book recently when I went to a visit at one of the Louisville libraries here. And one of the male librarians had tears in his eyes after he heard the story. And I thought that was just such a great testimony to the story of the book.
Because what I was mentioning earlier is that, I mean, one, we know there are only a handful of books out there with Black Santas. There's starting to be more, but there really aren't that many. But yours is one of the only ones I know that actually addresses the whole issue of what color is Santa Claus and gives such a beautiful explanation about it. You know, that really addresses it head on and in a way that kids can understand. And in a way that I think is actually good for a lot of adults too, to understand. I mean, it's really beautiful.
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that because all of the books that I write just come from my heart. And I watch a lot of news. I probably watch too much news. And sometimes, you know, it can be very sad and weigh heavy on my mind. But that's where a lot of my children's books come from. The ideas for them come from the problems and the conflict. Isn't he beautiful?
Yeah, like you said, just like Santa should be. Just so happy and warm. And
This Is the Earth came from me watching too much news and kind of being fed up with why we all can't just share this one big gigantic planet, which is our home. Yeah.
Can you give us a preview about the third one? Maybe we should back up and tell people what's in the first 2. And then I don't know if you want to share any about the third one or not, if it's too early.
Oh yeah, it's not a big, huge secret. So I'd be glad to talk about it. But the first book I wrote in 2019 because my family loves Christmas and we love Christmas books. And it was very difficult to find things that look like us. And it's really cool. Like Charlene just sent me some text messages a couple weeks ago. Her and her family were at Target and they sent me some pictures of Target had items with, you know, Black Santa Clauses, Black Angels, Black Mrs. Clauses, Black Elves. You know, when I was growing up, there was nothing like that. No Black Santa, no Black Angels. All of the angels that people put on top of the tree, including in black, were these white angels.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that for your home, but sometimes, like we explain in the Nick of Time book too, you know, sometimes you want to see that love can look like you also.
Right.
Love doesn't have to be one color. Love comes in all forms, and so it doesn't have to look like one thing or the other. Sometimes, you know, people criticize the whole Black Santa movement. People weren't happy with the Little Mermaid being black. It's kind of
Right.
crazy because a mermaid is not even a real creature. But anyway, um, um, a mermaid is not real like Santa Claus is real. But you know, people criticize this just because it's something they're not used to, and they're afraid that people want to replace them. And it's a beautiful thing because you'll see all of these social media images where Ariel with the red hair and the white skin is actually welcoming the brown skin Ariel or the black Ariel into the family. So there's room for all of us, and that's all it's about. But the first book, I write a lot about social justice for kids, understanding why certain things happen or how they help, even at a young age. And so the first, In the Nick of Time, I was moved to write to try to explain the concepts of poverty and those who are houseless to children. So the first In the Nick of Time is a book about social justice for children that explains what poverty looks like, that you can't always see it, you can't always identify it, but that you can help at any age. And then the second In the Nick of Time book called In the Nick of Time 2, yes, that's from, thank you for sharing that. The second In the Nick of Time book called In the Nick of Time 2 is about social justice and race. And sometimes people think that's too heavy for kids, but it's not, because believe me, kids are talking about it anyway. They're already talking about it. When my little boy was little, a white child told my little boy that Santa couldn't be black. And my had grown up with Santas who looked black. And in fact, that's why I wrote these books, because there weren't enough books for my own child to see himself as the hero in a holiday story. That's the whole reason why this started. So, you know, we're not telling the whole world that Santa Claus has to be black everywhere you go. We're just saying that Santa might look different depending on what home you're in. And so for the third book, this is just an idea that came to me because another thing that we focus on at Makeaway Media is hope and empathy. We talk a lot about dreaming and having hope and having empathy for one another, because the more empathy you have for yourself, the more empathy you'll have for people in the world. You know, that's the way it works. You have to give it to yourself. You have to be kind to yourself, and you'll see more kindness in the world. And I think a lot of times when you see people who aren't nice, those people aren't very nice to themselves either. So the third In the Nick of Time book is going to be back to those Makeaway principles of kindness and hope. And I think it's going to be called Hope in the Nick of Time. It'll be really cool to document this journey with Charlene and I, because you might get to see how the title gets formed, how the illustrations get formed, how the idea comes to life. But I believe it's going to be Hope in the Nick of Time, because our world is so lacking right now in kindness and empathy and hope. We see it every day. It's all around us. How do you explain to kids how they have this Christmas tree in their home with all kinds of presents under the tree, and we drive past people on the street holding signs saying that they're hungry? You know, there's war. I don't have to go too far into that. We all know what's going on, but there's war, there's famine. How do you stay hopeful in a world that sometimes feels hopeless? And that's what the third book is going to be about.
I love that. I feel like I would need to read that for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because you're right. We have this like this juxtaposition of this really beautiful, warm, fun time when we're, kids are receiving presents, hopefully giving presents also, but then they see these people that, either on the TV or just in our own cities that are really suffering. And kind of like you said, when you talk about race, we might think this is a heavy topic for kids, but they see it. I mean, we pass people all the time and they're holding up signs, and my kids, they want to know about it and they want to talk about it. So I love the idea of having a book that really addresses that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think you can ever have too much. Sometimes people talk to me about their book is, and they'll say, "Well, I've been wanting to write a book, but it's already a book, that's like that." And I'll say, "Not written by you.
Right.
Might be a book that's like that, but not written by you." Everybody has their own unique voice and unique story. So don't not write a book about hope because you just saw 10 books about hope in the bookstore, because you never know who you might touch with your unique voice or your unique story.
Yes.
Yeah. I keep putting that because I want to make sure people see this.
I love that.
This is another thing we didn't have when I was growing up.
Yes. Oh, those are so cool.
We didn't have Black Santa Claus earrings. And I love these sparkly earrings. So I want to make sure everybody sees these because I only get to wear them a couple weeks a year.
Yeah. I love that. Where did you find those?
Bobble Bar. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. Bauble bar, Bobble Bar. But Bobble Bar used to only be online, and now they're even in like Target. So you can find them in different places. But they also have black earrings. What is Charlene saying? Oh, yeah.
These are so cool. And the third book will be so meaningful. Yes, agreed.
So I want you to get excited, Charlene, because we got a lot more work to do.
So I'm curious. Okay, so you're having this retreat together. I can't remember. Have you guys worked together in person? I know most of it is online. Have you ever gotten together to work on a book, in the same room before?
We've never worked on a book in the same room,
Mm.
but we have gotten together. We worked together, I think, Charlene, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we worked together for 3 years before we ever met in person.
Wow.
I know. And I was like, we got to meet. I just found Charlene on Twitter. So people say all the time, especially self-published authors, they say, how do you find an illustrator? And it's not easy because you can find a lot of illustrators on social media, but some, that's right. I thought it was right. You can find illustrators, but if they say like on social media, they'll all say or represented by. That means they've signed with an agent. And a lot of times, I'm self-published, and a lot of times when illustrators have agents, they kind of have this pipeline of work that's coming to them from other agented authors. So I'm not an agented author, meaning I don't have an agent. I work for, I self-publish, and so it's very difficult to work with an illustrator who works with an agency. So then that narrows the field of who's left, and it makes who is left a little harder to find. But I was on Twitter one day, which I'm not on Twitter anymore. It's turned into just a mess and I can't deal with it. So I got off of Twitter. But I was on Twitter one day, and I saw another author post about a book that he just released, and it was called Tied, I believe. TIED. It was about a young boy learning how to tie a tie for the first time. And it's a beautiful book because even though it's largely about a young boy learning how to tie his tie, it was about self-esteem and responsibility. But what was even more beautiful is that it was a little Black boy. Because one of the things that's missing in children's literature is for decades, if you think about it, for decades, all of these different stories about kids who weren't Black doing normal things, normal everyday things, learning how to tie a tie. But Black and brown children didn't have that. So I love the book. I love the cover. I love the artwork. I reached out to Charlene. I said, hey, I just saw the artwork that you did. on this other book. I love it. Are you open for work? Are are you accepting commissions, basically, is the word.
Mhm.
And luckily she was open, but she interviewed me too. It wasn't just like a yes, I'm open. She wanted to make sure that my stories were something that inspired her, because I imagine it must be hard to produce art when you don't feel very inspired. And you can see the images you've already shown from Charlene's work. Um, those images are heartfelt. They come from her heart, just like the work book come from my heart. And I think that's what makes the story so powerful, is that they're meaningful. They meant something to the creators of the book, and that meaning comes through in the books. So we've met a couple times, but we never have done a book in person together. But we've done some projects. We had a real cool photo shoot in maybe 2021, I think. It was an awesome photo shoot where we were trying to show the world. In fact, I probably need to go back and share some of those pictures. I'll do that. But we were trying to show the world all of the projects that we had going on. And then next time we got together was 2022. Charlene came to the first ever in-person Louisville Book Festival.
Oh, neat.
Did a couple presentations for kids on illustrations, which was wonderful. We went to a couple schools together. So kids got to meet a Black author and a Black illustrator, which is amazing. And a lot of times people think that only Black and Brown need to see Black and Brown creators, but that's not true. All kids, all Browns need to see that Black and Brown people exist in all spaces. So it was wonderful. We've just had a really exciting career together.
And I have to say, because we did one interview, it's been a while now. I think probably one of the first, like back when we were first starting to do these IG lives, and and just the synergy between you two is very obvious. I just loved that, and people may not realize that most of the children's books you see from the big publishing houses,
Mm-hmm.
the author and the illustrator often don't even know each other and don't communicate. It's very rare that they actually get to work together. So that synergy, that you're talking about, and that relationship between the author and illustrator doesn't happen. And
Yeah.
I've never really been really clear on why that is. There must be some business reason that they just think it's easier and simpler to do it that way. But one of the things I think is so special about your books is this relationship between you and Charlene, which results in this beautiful these beautiful books where, like you say, you can feel that it really comes from the heart, and that's because you guys have really had a chance to create this shared vision, as opposed to her just getting the text and kind of coming up with her own ideas. You guys, I know Charlene, in the interview I did with her recently, she was talking about like kind of the back and forth that she's able to do when she's working on a children's book to really work with the authors. So you kind of have this shared product as opposed to just kind of having text, having pictures, and then kind of putting them together.
Well, I know why
that comes through.
I know why the authors and the illustrators don't communicate. I'm going to say that in 1 minute, but I want to say something else before I forget too. We tried to find, I think it was me and you, Anna, and I know that Carrie, who helps us write our article website, she also looked at this. But I believe it was me, you, Carrie, and maybe Francis from Multicultural Children's Book Day. We tried to research how many books are available for sale with the Black Santa on the front, and we counted 25 a couple of years right before this came. Now there are more coming out, which is great. But a couple of years ago, there were 25 books available for sale. 25, actually less than 25. We said less than 25 to be safe. Less than 25 books with a Black Santa on the cover or in the story. What's even more rare than that, and I haven't counted, but it's way less than 25. What's even more rare than having a Black Santa in a story is having a Black author and an illustrator.
Yes.
That's even more rare. So that's a powerful combination that Charlene and I have. But I was going to address your point about why don't the author and the illustrator communicate more on the story? And that is because the author no longer owns the story.
Right.
When it goes to the publisher. So authors tend to sell their story That's how their story gets picked up, to a publisher who then owns the story. And it's really the publisher then that dictates the way the story could go. So one of the reasons I really love self-publishing, there used to be this stigma 5 years ago that people self-published because they couldn't get published anywhere else.
Right.
The thing I love about self-publishing, well, two things. I'll tell you two things I love about self-publishing. One is I own my story and I control the entire outcome.
Mm-hmm.
I even control the illustrations, even though I believe Charlene is a professional and a true artist. She has a lot of leeway with what she does. But there have been times where I've said to Charlene, this is not exactly what I envisioned. And Charlene will adapt that. But if you're an author whose book gets picked up by a publishing house, you lose a lot of your creative control. Now, if you're Stephen King, he probably can say how his book ends.
Right.
But for most everybody else, they lose a lot of that consulting power. And it then becomes the publishing house that says, here's how we think the characters should look. Here's how we think the story should start. Here's how we think the story should end.
I don't even think that they get to pick the illustrator. I think they might be able to say this is what we would like, but they don't even get to pick who the illustrator is.
They can say this is what they would like, but they don't get to pick their illustrator again, unless you're like,
Sure.
You're a very prominent, prolific bookseller, like maybe Jason Reynolds. He's not really a children's author, but I know he's worked on some like Miles Morales, some children, or like almost like graphic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I bet somebody like Jason Reynolds could probably say, I want Charlene Mosley.
Right.
For most of the rest of us, the publishing house pretty much owns the story. I say much because there's probably exceptions to this, but for the most part, the publishing house is going to have the control over the creation and the outcome of the way the story. And so that's why there's not more dialogue between the author and the illustrator, because the author is no longer in control of the story.
Right.
Because I love to be able to tell my story the way I want to, and I have a lot of friends that I met through Louisville Book Festival who have sold their stories to publishing houses, and you'll see authors say, like, I have a book coming out in 2025.
Yes.
Well, that's just too far in the future for
yes.
And then
especially, I know we've talked about, you mentioned about holiday books.
Yeah.
That often, because they like to only put out maybe one or just a handful of holiday books, and so yours might get pushed out 2 or 3 years.
Okay, that's exactly what I was about to say. If you have a holiday book and they're going to be released in 2025, and then Mariah Carey decides to release a holiday book, your book may get bumped.
Right.
So
Mariah Carey's going to win.
You can't compete with Mariah Carey. So and I just say that because Mariah Carey actually did put out a holiday book recently, so she was on my mind. But I like the control that I have as a self-publisher. I waited so late in my career to start publishing. I didn't publish my first book till I was in my mid-40s. And so by the time I was in my mid-40s, I didn't want to wait 5 years for a publisher to accept me, an agent to accept me, a publisher to accept me, them to find an illustrator, and then them to give me my production timeline of when the book would be released. I mean, I was like ready to go once I made my mind up. So those are things that I like about self-publishing, but self-publishing for everybody.
Yeah, and for those that are interested in that, if you go to our archives, we have a lot of interviews with Deedee where we really go in depth. If this is something that interests you, you can really do a deep dive into all of these aspects, why self-publishing versus why somebody else might choose traditional publishing, and all the different options there. And of course, you can also message us if you have any questions or something you'd like to see us address in these IG Lives. But yeah. I'm just looking at the time. I just want to go back to these. This is a result of self-publishing. And I think, like you said, I think there used to be a stigma about self-publishing, but I don't think that's really the case anymore, because there's such beautiful books.
Thank
you. As I mentioned, we only have 11 days until Christmas, but there's still plenty of time to get these. I know a lot of families have a tradition of Christmas Eve reading books together. This would be such a perfect book to read on both of these. they're not very long. You could read them both on Christmas Eve, and there's plenty of time to get them for that. Or if you have a tradition, some people, they have something where they read a new Christmas book every day, counting down to Christmas. These would be great to include in that. And they're not just for Black kids, they're for every kids, because this is really just a beautiful message, holiday message about inclusion and hope and love. And they'd be great to read in a classroom too, and spark a lot of discussion, I'm sure.
Another thing you can do, because these are social justice books, these books also make great gifts. So you can buy and donate them to your local library or a school classroom or to other kids. You know, you don't just have to get books just for kids in your family. Kids all over the world need books. So think about too, if you want to do some end of the year donation type things. Books make great gifts and they make great donations.
And if you don't have, even if you don't have money to go out and buy a lot of books, request it from your library. A lot of libraries, they respond to what people are requesting. So ask your library for it. I did that at our library, and now our library system carries it. So that's something everybody can do. That's really easy.
You're the bomb, Leanna. Thank you.
Well, you got to have good books in our libraries, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes. So thank you everybody for joining us. And like we said, hope you're having a wonderful holiday season if you celebrate, and that it's a joyous time for you and your family. And we appreciate all of you. And so thank you for helping us make this a great season. And thank you for joining us today, Deedee. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And thanks to Charlene for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.